Hello, Life Vantage. This is Darren Jensen coming to you from my office here in Salt Lake City, Utah, and here at our global headquarters. And today we have take 3 of our doctor series with Dr. Hoadley Harris. And we're grateful for Dr. Harris taking more time out of his schedule today. As you know, we tried doing it yesterday, but we ran into some technical difficulties and we don't seem to be experiencing these today. So we're grateful for that. Before we get started, I just wanted to give some shout outs to some of our people around the world. We have many of our distributors that are in Puerto Rico. I see that Hurricane Maria is headed your way. It's a Category 5. Just know that our thoughts and prayers are with each of you. Please take shelter. That looks like a very dangerous storm. Also, shout out to our Mexico distributors. We're on our way down to Mexico for the Mexican Leadership Academy. And we're just reading news reports now that Mexico City, or at least nearby, has been hit with a 7.1 earthquake. So our thoughts and prayers are with you in Mexico. I don't know what effect this might have on the Leadership Academy. As far as I know, it's still going on. And the airport is closed, but we hope that it will be open soon, and we look forward to seeing each and every one of you there. For our presentation today and our doctor series, we will be giving away some Pro Tandem NRF2. So if you would like to be eligible for this, please just in the live comments section, mark down your name, your city and state, and we'll get you into the drawing. Even if you're watching this on a later day, we'll wait a few days before we do the drawing. But again, the dual synergizer, just mark it down, and name, city, and state. With that, we'd like to move on, and let me introduce our doctor today that we're going to be interviewing. He's Dr. Hoadley Harris. Let me read you a little bit about his background because it's pretty fascinating. Dr. Harris is a family medicine physician who is in full-time practice in Fargo, North Dakota. He's been practicing medicine since 1985. A large part of his practice focuses on anti-aging and wellness, in which LifeVantage products are an integral element. He is an assistant clinical professor in the Department of Family Medicine at the University of North Dakota School of Medicine. And Dr. Harris is currently a principal investigator in multiple FDA clinical trials studying various diseases and treatment. He was introduced to the NFR2 science and a product called Pro Tandem in 2014. And with that, I would like to welcome to our broadcast today, Dr. Harris. Dr. Harris, thank you.
Thanks very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, we're glad that you took time out of your busy schedule today to join us. Let me just jump right in and let's get started. Look, you are a family medicine physician who practices in anti-aging and wellness. You're an assistant clinical professor. You're a principal investigator on multiple FDA clinical trials. How do you bridge the gap between being there and also coming into LifeVantage? Can you just bridge that gap for us?
Sure, it happened very unexpectedly. One of my good friends, he's been my friend for years, he's in pharmaceutical industry, Dustin Steckler, who's actually my upline, came in one day and said, hey, there's something that you really ought to look at. And Mark Gordon, who I'm sure most everybody knows, had him give me an article called the NRF2 Guardian article. And I finally read that. And what I saw was that the things that I treat every day, whether that be hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, you name it, almost everything that I do every day had one thing in common, and that was oxidative stress. And so being a science-based physician, I did a lot of research on the NRF2 pathway and oxidative stress. And it was subsequent to that, in April of 2014, that I got involved with LifeVantage. And that was for one reason, and that was the health benefits of Pro Tandem. The scientific peer-reviewed studies are a really big deal. And really what I saw from those was that two main things. One was finally to be proactive in medicine and prevent disease rather than being reactive and treat the chronic things that I see all day. And the second thing was a chance to slow the aging process. So I was really excited about that, and that's the way I got started.
Okay, well, thank you. I forgot to mention this at the beginning. Normally on our doctor series, I read a disclaimer just stating that these statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration, and these products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. So now that I've got that in, well, so Dr. Harris, talk to me about, so you first received an article for the NRF2. Talk to me about the NRF2 pathway. Why is it important? How is it activated? And how it's activated?
Absolutely. Well, until we had Protandim NRF2, we didn't really have a great activator of the NRF2 pathway. But the pathway itself is simply when a messenger protein goes from the outside part of the cell into the nucleus and attaches to the DNA. And there the NRF2 transcription factor causes the DNA to work in a different fashion, to express itself. And specifically what it does, the 200 genes that it modulates are involved in actually protecting our health. They do things such as improve our ability to metabolize drugs and toxins, to deal with oxidative stress, to reduce inflammation, and also to protect us from age-related diseases, not the least of which is cancer, neurodegenerative disease like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. And so, to borrow from a University of Health Sciences article in 2010, they call the NRF2 pathway really the NRF2 guardian. It's a guardian of our health span. The bottom line for all of us is that as we get older, our NRF2 pathway becomes less and less active. So we have a rising level of oxidative stress. And it's that rising level of oxidative stress that's the most characteristic age-dependent aspect of aging that we know of.
Well, thank you. Now, as a physician, what do you tell people about Protandim NRF2? Because what you were just talking about was the pathway. Mm-hmm. I know most of us have, we all have to be very careful to distinguish that, between the pathway and what the product is. How do you talk to the people, to regular people about Protandim NRF2?
Sure. Just like I would try to, condense it and simplify it for anything else. But generally speaking, we try to talk about supplements, particularly during their annual wellness visit and that sort of thing. And the primary thing that I talk about is Protandim NRF2. And I just tell them, look, this is a supplement that's composed of 5 herbs that have no significant drug interactions or side effects, and that it causes your body to increase its own antioxidant production by 1,800%. And that's important because as we get older, we produce less antioxidants. And when you take Protandim, you lower your oxidative stress level to less than that of a 20-year-old, and that slows the aging process. And that's particularly important when you look at the National Institute on Aging study from 2016, which showed that Protandim was the only supplement that prolonged life in rodents by 7%. And if you extrapolate that to a human lifespan, that's about 5 years. And with just that brief discussion, it's hard not to get a lot of interest, from a patient.
Okay, very good. Are you aware of any, as far as I know, I don't know of any products that are similar on the market. What have you seen?
Well, actually there is. And really the only one that is commercially available in the pharmaceutical industry is Tecfidera. And Tecfidera dimethyl fumarate is a product which is indicated for the treatment of multiple sclerosis. In their trials, when they developed Tecfidera, they had an independent investigator by the name of Dr. Van Horsen, and he was hired to evaluate their progress. And they were looking at Tecfidera Protandim. They were looking at the active ingredient in broccoli. And what this gentleman's comment was in a multiple sclerosis journal, and this is easily accessible on the web, was that Protandim, a simple supplement, was by far more potent in what they were trying to do, which was activate the NRF2 pathway. That product, being a pharmaceutical, costs $54,000 a year.
And ours, I would say, is considerably less.
Considerably less.
A few $100s a year. All right. Well, thank you for clarifying that. Let's move on to the next product, and because I think let's try to hit kind of our activated essentials, which is kind of the core of our line. So we've talked about our Protandim NRF2. Let's talk about Protandim NRF1. Can you talk to me about the NRF1 pathway, why it's a critical pathway, the importance of mitochondrial function? Because I think of any of our new products, we're so good at talking about NRF2 that I think a lot of us don't know how to talk about NRF1. Can you tell us what we should be talking about?
Absolutely. The NRF1 pathway is another protein messenger pathway, but rather than activating antioxidant production like NRF2 does, when NRF1 transcription factor attaches to the DNA, it causes an increase in mitochondrial formation, function, and it helps the mitochondria protect itself from chromosomal damage. And the thing that you have to understand is that mitochondria are the energy factories in your body. They produce ATP. And so when you take Protandim NRF1, you are enhancing the function, the number, and the ability of the mitochondria to protect itself. That's essentially what we're talking about. And when you do that, you optimize the body's ability to take oxygen and nutrients and make energy. Now, it's a critical pathway because 95% of all your physical and mental energy comes from mitochondria. It's also interesting that 95% of your oxidative stress is produced from this energy production. But the pathway optimizes the utilization of energy and oxygen to do that. It's really important to understand that NRF2 pathway is important with NRF1. And because when you take Protandim NRF1, you increase mitochondrial energy production, you produce more free radicals, you increase oxidative stress. So it's essential that you're taking an NRF2 activator to counteract that. So if a person's just going to say, look, I can't afford both, I'm going to take one or the other, then you want to take Protandim NRF2. But ideally, both would be best, of course.
Well, that's why we combine them together in our dual synergizer pack.
There you have it. Exactly.
Remember to put your name, city, and state, and we'll get you in for a free drawing on that. Keep going.
So let's just talk about disease states and mitochondrial dysfunction. Let's don't talk about disease. Let's skip disease because that's kind of a tight line to try to negotiate there. So I understand.
Let's stay away from that line. But and I apologize for stopping you on that.
No
let's talk about the product itself of Protandim NRF1. How is that different from other products that may claim maybe something similar on the market?
Well, I think the best way to answer that is simply to explain the studies that we have that show what our product, Protandim NRF1, does. Natalie Chevreau, our Chief Science Officer, is the person who is responsible for developing Protandim NRF1. And she did this through her experience and multiple things were tried. But what she came up with in Protandim NRF1 was shown to be effective by two different types of studies. One was called an in vitro study where we take human cells in the lab in a test tube and add NRF1 to them and measure the outcome. The second were human studies where we gave humans Protandim NRF1 and measured their response. So if we look at the in vitro, the lab studies, if you will, to start with, Dr. Chevreau took human kidney cells and she added the Protandim NRF1 to them. And in another group of the same cells, she added placebo. And what she found was that NRF1 gene expression increased by 160% when she did that. This stuff works. It causes the NRF1 protein to influence the way DNA is functioning. And the second thing that she noted was that the ATP production, the energy production, increased by 20%. Who couldn't use 20% more energy? But those were in vitro tests. Now let's look at the human studies for a minute. What she did is took 40 human subjects and she studied them for 4 weeks. And she took measurements at 2 and 4 weeks. And the measurements were done via a health questionnaire as well as a visual analog scale. And they measured multiple parameters. And what happened was that people had a definite response at 2 weeks, but then they had an even better response at 4 weeks. So it kept going. The things that they measured that improved were, number one, sleep. People slept better. They also had more dreams, and particularly that means that you have more deep sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, or REM sleep. The study participants said that they felt better rested in the morning, that they had better energy, that they had less fatigue. And they also said that it was easier for them to exercise in 30 and 40% at 2 and 4 weeks. And lastly, they thought their focus was better. So here we've got a test tube study showing that this stuff undeniably activates the NRF1 site on DNA. And secondly, you have the studies that show the effects in humans.
Well, I know that I was one of those 40 human testers. So whenever Dr. Chevreau comes up with something interesting, I'm always one of the guinea pigs. So I remember that study. Now, you talked a little bit about energy. Could you differentiate, if possible, maybe the difference between the energy that I'd feel from like NRF1 compared to like an Axio? Because that's a question that I get sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. With regard to Axio, most of the time, most people, sensation of reduced energy and fatigue is really due to a loss of focus, low mood, and brain fog. And that's because most of us sit at a desk or are in an office all day, and we're not out doing hard physical labor. So when they take an energy drink, they describe that as, I've got more energy, but really what you're doing is relieving brain fog and that type of thing. Now, and that's because Axio addresses 3 things. The 5 proprietary ingredients probably work to enhance neurotransmission. It makes one brain cell talk better to another brain cell. The second thing is it probably improves blood flow, which can enhance function. And the last thing is it enhances mental clarity and focus. So let's contrast that with Protandim NRF1. And that causes an intracellular increase in energy. Okay, it increases ATP, which is what your body uses to produce all the energy, particularly for your heart, for your muscles, and your brain. And so these are 2 different approaches to energy, which are very complementary. One is intracellular, one does not deal with ATP.
Okay, well, thank you. Let's shift to another member of our Activated Essentials pack, which is the ProBio. Why does somebody need to take a probiotic daily?
Well, life in general, drugs, diet, alcohol, disease, all of these things affect a change in the balance of bacteria in the gut. And, normally we think of bacteria as bad, as something that causes an infection. Well, in the gut, you need a balance of good and bacteria to maintain normal function. And the fact of the matter is that when you restore that normal balance of good and bacteria, which is very delicate, you actually improve the function of the gut and also of your health in general. That kind of leads us into the gut-brain axis. And the gut-brain axis is a bidirectional pathway of neurohormonal communication between the gut and the brain. And that involves both the bacteria in the gut and the central nervous system. Now, the bacteria in the normal balance are important in that normal gut health. But when that normal balance goes, and I should say that when the gut is functioning normally, it helps us metabolize xenobiotics, that's foreign substances. It helps us protect ourselves from invading bacteria and a variety of other things. But from a structural perspective, the easiest way to think about this is that maintaining that normal gut bacteria helps maintain the normal lining of the gut so that one doesn't develop a leaky gut. And that concept is that when you have a leaky gut, the gut isn't functioning normally, gut-brain communication goes awry, and we know that that directly affects both not only your physical health, but also your mental health. That's really the essence of the gut-brain axis. And we've got recent studies that show that abnormal amounts of bacteria can be linked to numerous physical maladies. But for the purposes of this discussion, we'll leave that alone. But you can find all of that on PubMed.gov.
Yeah, and you know, but in broad terms of speaking, I think I've mentioned before, I was just reading something on, I don't know, out of some magazine, and it had an article, and see, this is where I didn't understand the importance so much of this gut-brain axis. It was saying that an imbalance in having the wrong type of bacteria can cause anxiety. It can have mental health issues. I mean, I was astounded by just how broad it is, and how what's the word? How cavalier we are sometimes about taking medications that disrupt that whole balance. It's made me reevaluate how often I might take an antibiotic. I'm not saying not to take antibiotics, but now I give it a lot more thought and say, should I? I mean, is this, anyway.
No question about it. Antibiotics are one of the things that change the content of your gut bacteria without question. And, you know, the human studies to date on all these issues are small. It's difficult to make broad generalizations, you know, and certainly there'll be more to come, but there's a plethora of information regarding all of this at the NIH's website, PubMed.com.
So we have ProBio. What makes that unique?
Well, first and foremost, ProBio contains the right bacteria. It contains different lactobacillus and bifidobacterial species, which we know help restore that normal balance of good bacteria. Each individual lactobacillus species has numerous health benefits in and of itself. But ProBio is unique beyond that. And part of the thing that makes it unique is the coating on the ProBio tablet, and that's called BioTract. And specifically what that does is it protects the bacteria from heat when it's stored on the shelf, as well as heat in the body, and probably even more important, the acid in the stomach. So that allows those bacteria to get deep into the gut where they need to be to do what they're supposed to do. Another thing that makes ProBio unique is that we have Wellmune in it. And Wellmune is all it is a fragment of the cell wall from the baker's yeast cell. And it has been shown to enhance your natural immunity. I believe some of the studies showed a reduction in upper respiratory infections in kids who took Wellmune. But on a cellular basis, it enhances the white cell function so that it helps strengthen our natural immunity. So really, it's all about the right type and number of bacteria, the coating on the tablet that allows delivery to the gut, And thirdly, Wellmune to enhance your immunity is what makes ProBio so unique.
Yeah, I kind of failed to understand that initially when we were coming out with it, the round nature of those big pills. I normally swallow like 14 of various of our products at once, and those would kind of get stuck on the way down.
Yeah.
And but I think once you understand why they're round, like you were talking about, it's to get them down deep into your digestive system. Then it was worth it. You know, I made the effort.
And going to the smaller size, I think, was a good thing too.
Yeah. Now we have 3. So far as employees, we still get the bigger size. But here soon we'll get the smaller size, I think. Well, Dr. Harris, I'm looking at the time here, and we've taken up. Typically, we like to do about half an hour, and we're just about there. The time has flown by. And again, I want to thank you for taking the time again out of your day to get back with us and really share your wisdom and insights on our Activated Essentials product line, because it's such a key part of what we do. And thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me. And it's a real honor to be on the medical advisory board, and look forward to future events.
All right. Well, for everyone out there, again, thank you for joining us today. This is our last broadcast of the day. Our broadcast is scheduled for tomorrow was going to originate out of Puerto Rico. We're going to try to schedule another guest if we can, and we'll let you know our progress on that for tomorrow. But again, for all of those in Mexico City and Puerto Rico, we send out our thoughts and prayers to you, and we hope to see you soon down in Mexico City. With that, have a wonderful day. And again, remember, we're doing the drawing for our dual synergizer. Make sure that you put your name, your city, and your state down, and we'll get you into the drawing. So thank you very much, and everyone have a great day. Bye.